Hubba.
Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather. Blue, blah, blue, 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 blue. Wah. Wah. Yeah.
Round
All right.
2.
I think you can hit record now. I think I'm ready.
Okay. So, what do you think about baseball?
3, 2, 1.
You're recording. I hope you know this.
No, I know.
Okay. So, have you seen the Mets recently? All right.
No.
So, we just had steaks. This is what we did, folks. The last hour or so, we went on a walk. We talked to some of Alex's neighbors. We ate steak on the back porch in recliner chairs.
We ate a steak and a half apiece. Just worth saying. So.
So we're feeling good. We got the energy back for round 2.
Yeah, I'm kind of in like that protein brain mode, but I've also been drinking iced tea all day, so I'm a little caffeinated. And ready to rock. Let's go.
We are ready to rock. Okay. So, some questions for you. What is your personal finance philosophy?
Good question. All good questions.
Yeah.
I would actually refer back to the interview you did with Joe Norman. I think he really kind of nailed it. Like, I definitely share. I've learned some stuff from him in terms of just like everyday layperson personal finance.
Yes.
He even lent me a book or two on the subject. But ever since I was even young, I've always just kind of naturally been inclined to save a penny.
Right.
And I've always been kind of loath to spend. So that's something that, like, that's nicely come naturally to me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I definitely believe strongly in living well below my means. Not just below my means, but well below my means. Socking away the money in the piggy bank. Investing in company-sponsored, at our company it's a simple IRA, but, a retirement plan. Contributing not just the minimum, but the maximum to that out of every paycheck, which I'm fortunate to be able to do. So saving for that retirement and just simple mutual funds. I'm not like day trading. We talked about that. You and I were actually talking about that earlier. And yeah, so that's the key. Just for me, just living well below my means and saving money and investing in very low risk, retirement accounts. And then again, referring back to something I heard, it was either you or Joe say, viewing money or like personal finance as a path to freedom, rather than a path to like getting something that I want, the things that we want.
Right.
But freedom from stress, which is like an enormous luxury and privilege that we have. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts?
I would agree. I think that when we're young, if we have the privilege of having excess income, we want to sock away as much as we possibly can. And I've always lived way below my means. I still do. I think that there's some strength. I feel strong in the fact that I have set myself up decently well financially by living below my means, and that's right from the beginning.
You're really good at that.
I've always been comfortable living a relatively simple life because stuff doesn't make us happy. It just does not. So we were talking about day trading. One thing about day trading is I think both of us wouldn't be good handling the emotional volatility of it. I certainly would not be. That's not my jam. I prefer stuff that I don't know the value of it. So I invest in real estate.
Yeah.
one of the beautiful things about real estate is I have no idea what it's worth today. I don't know what it's worth tomorrow. No one's coming to me telling me what it's worth. I mean, for you, you probably do a good job not looking at your brokerage statements. Oh. Right? I mean, you just...
set it and forget it. Mutual funds, yep.
Love it.
Never, ever look at them. I mean, I do know what the current value is.
Yeah.
But don't. I don't think about it. Don't worry about it. I do wonder, something interesting, though. I do wonder if you and I might have slightly different objectives when it comes to debt. For me, as the...
Oh, hey. Here, I'll make sure that the camera sees your people.
Yeah, my doggy Maya is scratching the window. She wants to come in. Sorry, bud. Right, I'm going to let her in real quick.
It's a slide dog.
Yeah.
This is sparkling water. I need to be clear with you.
So, like for me, a big part of my, finance plan objective at this point in my life is to maintain absolutely 100% zero debt.
Love it.
I mean, generally, we have really good reasons to take on debt, in our lives, whether it's like a house or a car, in your case, entrepreneurial pursuits. And for me, not being an entrepreneur, a business person, it's like at this point in my life, it's like the house is completely paid for, a car, all of that stuff, and that's like very, very important to me to not be paying interest on stuff.
Huge.
Yeah. And I've been fortunate to be in that position for a long time and not have a reason, or a motivation, I should say, to take on additional debt, and paid down my college debt, years ago. But there are compelling reasons to go into debt and stay in debt. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that from maybe a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, my perspective has certainly evolved over time, and I have become more cautious. I'm a real estate investor, and many people as real estate investors pile on quite a bit of debt on their properties. We buy properties, oftentimes putting down 20%, sometimes more, sometimes less. My general approach over time has been to try to buy properties at a reasonable price, so not overpaying, which is a very subjective measure.
Hunting down the good deals.
Hunting down the good deals. Being cautious. I haven't done an acquisition in about a year and a half because prices have been so high. So I've been focused more on creating a stable portfolio so that we can go to the next level. So I have become more cautious around debt, especially with rising interest rates. And even in the beginning, I was trying to not indebt my properties too much because that can be very dangerous. You can find yourself in a situation. In the late 80s, there were tons and tons of real estate developers all around the country that lost their shirt because they had way too much debt on their property. So when their properties lost value, a lot of banks had capital calls, and they said, hey, you got to pay your loan right now. And so a lot of people lost their properties from that. And in order to be successful in the game of investing, you want to survive. That is rule number one. So Warren Buffett says, rule number one, don't lose money. Rule number two, see rule number one.
Right.
And
famous words.
Famous words. So my view on finance and investing is you just got to survive, and you just have to be cautious, be patient, look for opportunities, whatever that opportunity is, and then do things for the long haul. So I've definitely become a little more cautious. I never considered myself, someone who was going out there and taking crazy risks. I mean, buying multifamily properties at decent prices. Yeah, so I do have debt, and over time, I will continue to use debt to buy properties. But you got to be so cautious because when rates rise, you can really get hurt.
So you consider your overall financial plan philosophy these days to be a pretty cautious approach?
I would say so. I'm focusing more on cash and cash flow and diversification instead of just tacking on more properties.
Yeah. Fascinating world you live in, man.
I think we become more cautious over time. Many of us do. I've also seen a few people in the real estate market over the last 5 years go through challenges. So I've learned lessons from that without having to go through a big challenge myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. It's so interesting that you live in this world with all these different, moving puzzle pieces.
Well, you bought your first investment property when you were, maybe like 24?
I mean, that it might have even been younger. I feel like I was pretty young, like 22.
22. It was right out of college. When you and I both bought these properties, we were like right out of college.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy time because you and I didn't know that real estate was that cheap then. We didn't know. I mean, we're right after the Great Recession, as they call it, and real estate prices were, like half of what they are now.
Yeah.
And so you bought a 2-unit in the city.
Yeah, that was just a wild ride, man. And you kind of inspired me on that because you were just, hey, you should read these books on real estate investing, and you were getting all amped up on it, just at the infancy of buying your properties and building your real estate business, which has become quite large at this point. But at that point, you were just so hyped up. I got the impression you wanted to share that with everybody, which was awesome.
I was trying to convince every friend I had.
Yeah.
They should buy real estate now.
So you gave me 2 books, and I just it's very easy to get hyped up on some books that make it sound. I don't know if they're trying to make it sound easy, but they do make it sound easy. Because you're like, oh, this guy's saying I can do it. I can do it. So it was kind of diving in the deep end, buying a couple of rental properties, also living a completely crazy life at the same time. For me, I'm not, just to be clear, a real estate investor currently. Right. So at some point I sold a couple of the 2 properties that I had.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of people get in and get out. It's not in the long term. It's not for a lot of us. But
you did well on both properties.
But it was, I did learn a lot from that. I learned a lot about myself and my abilities to tackle things that seem crazy. Yeah. Because at that time, it seemed crazy to be a landlord. At that time in my life, I was just a wild man. Yeah. I was freshly still learning how to do sales, which was completely mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm a landlord. I'm living in the attic, like a troll of this house when I'm renting to people downstairs.
I love that.
I wouldn't take that back. I would do that over again for sure.
I love that you did that, and it's such a scrappy thing to do.
I mean, you did the same thing, right?
Yeah. You were living in the illegal attic apartment.
Oh, yeah.
That's common. That's common. I know a couple of other guys who've done that too.
It was legal because I owned the property. I was the only person legally allowed to live there.
It's fine. It was safe.
Yeah.
It was safe.
I mean, yeah.
It had access on both sides.
Yeah. Well, no, not really. But.
It didn't have access on both sides. It wasn't safe at all.
But it didn't matter. If you own the property, you can kind of do whatever you want. But you can't rent it to anybody else.
And I think that's...
It was very cold in the winter. I'm just going to say that. Very cold in the attic.
My first property, I lived in the tiny unit in the back, and I still have that place on Meg Street. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm living this nomad lifestyle. And recently I was thinking, you know what? Maybe I should set that unit up as an Airbnb unit. Have my staff run it, and then when I'm in town here, I'll just stay in that unit, my old unit. Because it was awesome. It's this tiny little 1 bedroom. Tiny, basically a studio. And I love that place. It was so fun to be living in a tiny place when and being scrappy like that.
It's a very nostalgic plan. I like that.
Yeah, it's important in the beginning of our lives to be scrappy, I think. I think that's very, very, very important. What do you...
I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just thought of this. I am very proud of my progress. Speaking in terms of living well below my means. Here's a perfect example. I am kind of proud of my progression of the places I've lived throughout my life. moving to college, of course, that was the whole thing. My college loans were paying for my housing. But getting out of college, and after our little stint out in Albany, where I lived with my parents for like 3 weeks before we moved back to Rochester.
So funny.
And when I moved back to Rochester, I moved in with a friend of mine in Geneseo that, like, it was over the summer.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, just come stay in the house, because, like, he's like, the other college students are, like, home for the summer, so you can just come, like, kind of crash in one of their bedrooms. And, like, I just stayed in some kid's bedroom for, like, a few months. So, lived there for free. Then, actually, my same friend, he had a girlfriend at the time who was living in a house on Culver Road here in the city of Rochester. And the landlord there, it was like a house where a bunch of strangers were all living together. Yeah. And the landlord there decided to convert what was essentially a fairly large closet into a bedroom. So I kind of snuck in there and was paying $200 a month to live literally in a room that was the size of my bed. So, like, going into my room, I was on my bed, essentially. But it was $200 a month, so you can't really live cheaper than that. And then from there...
It's the best.
Had a whole fiasco there, which I won't go into, where, like, essentially I was kicked out of the house. Let's just put it that way. But then I moved into the, like, cheapest decent apartment I could find, which was on Park Avenue, which is a nice neighborhood in Rochester.
Yes.
Like urban neighborhood, but the cheapest absolute possible apartment building there, and I had this like little tiny studio for $400 a month, which I know rental prices and everything have increased since then.
Twice that for the same unit, but maybe more.
Even at the time, that was really cheap rent.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And then and that's from there. That's when I did bought the house that you inspired me to buy, and I was living in the attic and actually making a little bit of money, rather than spending money, and then moved into another 3-unit house with my buddy because it was a whole thing with our bands where we renovated the basement into a soundproof practice space, and then we were like each living in the units upstairs, and like his brother was living in another unit, and I was like making a little bit of money there too after everything. It was pretty sweet.
So yeah,
saving a lot of money essentially.
I would say that would be good advice for anybody coming out of college, right? They should. Right now, real estate prices are quite a bit higher than they were 10 years ago. Mm. So, but like, why not live on the cheap? Why not try to buy a place if they can, as long as it cash flows? There are still deals out there. Maybe not in the Park Ave neighborhood, but you and I didn't have places in the Park Ave neighborhood. So we had places kind of in okay neighborhoods, and that was fine.
There's something to be said.
You don't have to have a fancy thing to start out with at all.
There's something to be said when you get started off on your own.
Cheap.
Of like, not worrying about the things that you want. Yet. Like, I'd like to live in a 2-bedroom apartment, or I'd like to have this, or I'd like to have that, and just
thinking too far ahead.
Take the opportunity to like invest in your future, right?
Go cheap.
Yeah,
because you get in a year, even if you bought the place and you're living in the attic, you can move out in a year if you want to. Yeah. I mean, or whatever. I mean, why not start? Hey, so you mentioned the band.
Yeah.
So you have had 2 bands in my time knowing you, right?
Yeah.
And then you've done your own music.
It was kind of like the same group of musicians, but one of them was my buddy's band, where he was like the songwriter and everything, and then the other one was my band, but we were all in each other's bands.
Right.
So just kind of like a musical community, put it that way.
Do you miss being in a band sometimes?
I did, occasionally. Yeah, because there were some wild times, but those were the party days, so, playing music at bars, and also, like, destroying my hearing, like, playing loudly in the basement without earplugs. But yeah, I mean, there's a certain romance to our past days, even when overall maybe I wasn't the happiest person.
Right.
There were still like some exciting times happening. So there's like a romance to that like danger and destruction and thrill of the wild times, right?
You've always had hobbies, and that's now one of the hobbies would be home maintenance. On your own home.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, right? What? I'm all over the place.
What, with your hobbies?
Nah, just yeah. Just
no, hey, I've always been a hobby guy. I mean, 2 years ago I was shotgun shooting. Last year I was riding skateboards.
That is true.
I mean, this year, I don't know. I guess I'm still riding skateboards.
What's up next?
And doing this.
Yeah.
I pick up random stuff all the time. That's like my thing.
Yeah.
One point I tried yoga for a little bit. Oh, I was into abstract art when I was making all those big paintings.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm definitely also a hobby guy, and I just generally change hobbies quite often. I did the same thing when I was a kid. Okay. I was constantly changing hobbies. You know, at one point I was into hatchets.
Okay.
Because hatchets are awesome.
Yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, it's like you throw in knives at trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was into knives and hatchets. One year I was into rock climbing. One year I was into coins.
You know, I really never...
I've always been a hobby guy.
I never really put two and two together and realized you're like a jack of all hobbies, like I am. Like, that just never occurred to me.
Hobbies are great.
But like, now you're saying all these things, I'm like, oh yeah, Ben was into all that stuff.
New hobbies are kind of fun.
Oh, I love it. I get so excited about new stuff. Some of it sticks around, or I come back to it later on. Like, I go through these cycles.
I cycle too. The one hobby that... I don't know if this is really a hobby, but something that sticks for me would be reading. I've just always been a reader. That's something that has always stuck.
Maybe if it's something that sticks and you do it forever, you call it a passion.
It's just a passion.
Yeah.
What one of your other hobbies? Again, home maintenance.
Yeah.
Making food, also.
Yeah, man.
You're an amateur chef. I saw you on the Food Channel recently.
Yeah, right. I just like to be creative and like throw stuff together and make up my own recipes like on the fly.
You also have some amazing art that you've made.
Thank you.
I wish I had one of them right here.
Yeah, it's like watercolor and collage stuff, and just kind of goofing off and putting the anxiety energy into something like creative and productive.
Yeah. So you first did your first international travel. You just recently had your first international travel experience.
That is true.
What was your favorite day on that trip like?
So,
what did you do? And those are dogs in the background.
Playing with their squeaky toys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I went to Ireland recently. So that was my first international travel trip. And, I mean, it was incredible. Like, having never traveled abroad, other than Canada, but that doesn't really count when you live in Rochester. It's like right across the border. And I find that with every trip, yeah, because I've been on plenty of vacations and trips, not international, but with every trip, there is always like one day where just like everything seems to be amazing from start to finish. Do you find that?
The best day.
There is always one best day.
I had a one best day in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and I thought, at the end of the day, I came away thinking, that is a great city. My goodness, just based on one day.
One perfect day.
One awesome day.
Where you're just like, your energy is crackling from the moment you get up, and you just do some amazing things, and then it just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, that day for me in Ireland, I was with Brittany and her parents, so it was very special to go on a trip with them. But we went to... there's a set of islands called the Aran Islands, A-R-A-N, and they're kind of famous for being like super rustic and beautiful, and there's lots of sheep, and they make like sweaters and stuff out of wool.
Love it.
But we went to the smallest, I think it was the smallest island, called Inisheer, and we took a ferry over there. The ocean was amazing. It was like a super sunny, beautiful day, which in Ireland, it's like there's a lot of rain and cloud cover all the time. So that was nice on its own.
I love it.
But we get to this little island. There's no cars. There are like some streets and roads, but we never saw a car the whole time.
Yeah.
So Brittany and I rented bicycles and just started riding all over I think it was like the eastern, maybe southeastern side of the island.
Yeah.
And there's just... I'd never seen this before, but stone walls. Every single property line had a stone wall on it. So it was like this maze. Like we were in this maze of stone walls filled with cows and sheep everywhere. Nobody to be seen, no cars, no buildings. Just like this vast maze of stone walls and sun and water and beauty. And it was like it really was a foreign land. It was such a special moment.
I love
And we're just stopping and like petting random horses we're finding and like getting a little bit lost because I got excited and I wanted to go say hi to like a horse that was like down a path, and Brittany was like, I don't want to ride down the path, so I went up there and got kind of lost, and then we're trying to find each other again. So like that was pretty fun. So we were on that island for a couple of hours, just had some amazing times, had good food, and then took the ferry back to the mainland, and it's right by the cliffs of Moher, which are... Have you seen those before? Maybe pictures? Or...
I know they're called the Cliffs of Insanity also.
From Princess Bride.
Yes.
Yeah, they're featured there.
Yes.
I think they're
I've never been there, though.
Also
I've
featured...
never been to Ireland, so...
Okay. You've been to England.
England, yeah.
But just really like a... They're not like a wonder of the world, but they should be like one of the wonders.
Really?
It's just like unbelievable. We saw them from below, but then we drove up to above.
Yeah.
And... Wish I could show you pictures right now. Well, you can look it up later, but it's just beautiful. So at any rate, Brittany, we had not told anybody that she was pregnant, because supposedly you're supposed to get to a certain phase of the pregnancy before you start telling people. So she had a picture that said, I'm a wee bit pregnant with like a 4-leaf clover, like Irish thing. So that was her like we did a photo shoot on the cliffs of Moher of her wearing that t-shirt and me there too. And then so she could post that to, she does the social media. So she was able to post that. And for her, it was so cool to see that special moment for her in like such an amazing setting on such a beautiful day. And that was like sun up to sundown, just majestic, everything.
That's amazing.
And Ireland in general, my experience of it was that it's just one of the most beautiful places overall that I've ever been.
Yeah.
Like you see so much contrast here in the U.S. when you drive around, and like when you see farms, like a lot of farmers are having a really hard time here in New York. In general, I grew up with a lot of kids that were from farm families, and their families were very, very poor. They struggled a lot. In Ireland, they've got something going on where the farmers do really well. They raise cattle and make Kerrygold butter, which I didn't know is like, it's not so much a business as a, it's like
a collective? It's
like a collective or something. So if you ever see Kerrygold butter in the store, that's what it is. It's just made by the farmers of Ireland. And they seem to do pretty well. Like,
that's cool.
Everywhere you go, you're just seeing herds of cows and sheep on these majestic hills and mountains and everything everywhere, and it's just like this pristine land. Or that's what it seemed like to me as a tourist anyways.
I love that.
So that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me, not having trotted the globe before.
What did you eat on that day?
I don't remember.
What was your favorite meal in Ireland?
I always like. So I'm kind of an adventurous guy. So I always like eating. I always like eating the stuff that makes Brittany go ew. So I don't. I'm not gonna say it was the tastiest thing, but my favorite thing that I ate was black pudding, which is like a blood, kind of like a blood oatmeal sausage. It's just like every time I eat. Like when I ate it, she thought it was disgusting, and then every time throughout the trip I mentioned it, she was like, "Don't talk about the blood, the black pudding."
I think I've had that before.
I think that's featured in England too, so maybe that's where you had it.
Yeah, I think it came in almost like a cake.
Yeah, it was like little. Oh, okay. Yeah, it was like little slices of like. Who knows? Probably something similar.
That sounds like. Would you go back?
Yeah.
There's so many countries to see.
Yeah, but I would definitely go back if someone gave me another shot at Ireland. It was amazing.
One thing that you and I haven't discussed is you just went to St. Kitts, and we haven't talked about that at all because you wanted to save it for this interview.
Yeah, well,
so I want to hear what you were saving for this interview. I bet you're like, yeah, it was good. I bet you're gonna say, oh, it was a nice time.
No, I mean there were some fun stories. So first of all. That was also technically an international travel. So twice this year,
course of a couple months.
It's a Caribbean island. I believe it's now used to be a colony of England, I think.
Yeah.
But since the 80s, it's been like the smallest like independent country in the southern hemisphere, something like that. I'm probably getting that wrong. But St. Kitts and Nevis, it's 2 islands. So we went to St. Kitts because Brittany magical woman. She works for this
magical.
she works for this huge company that in the medical technology space.
Yeah.
She works in tech support, and her company has a rewards program where they pick a very small percentage of people that work for the company across the nation.
Sure.
Like the top talent, so to speak. Every year they send a few people on like a vacation somewhere. So Brittany won this award, which is incredible on its own. And they sent us to a luxury resort on this island of St. Kitts, which is like way outside of my wheelhouse. Like I'm not an extravagant person, so I would never ever stay at a luxury resort. This was like the prices online were like $800 a night to stay there.
Wow.
Like kind of like all inclusive.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I only ever stayed at a place like that.
I definitely have not.
That sounds crazy.
But since it was like a completely free trip for us, like hell yeah, it was awesome. And like the second we got there, I'm like, oh, this is different because just pulling up to the entryway, we get off the plane, we take a shuttle to this resort with like 55 of her coworkers from across the country. Actually, we were the last shuttle in, so it was like her local crew with us. But you walk up to like the front entrance, and it's just like this kind of building with like a pergola thing overhead, and it's like a tunnel through the resort compound with like winding maze-like pathways through ponds of like koi fish of like all colors and sizes, and just like everything's angles and tiles and architecture, and like that was the whole resort. Infinity pools and freaking zigzags and a spa and like restaurants, and like it's just like well beyond my experience. But not to belabor this whole thing, but like
I love this. I want to hear this.
But I mean, it was wild for people like us. And
that's amazing.
And normally when we go on a vacation somewhere, we see somewhere new. Like I'm wanting to go everywhere, see everything, visit all parts. I had no motivation the entire time to see the rest of the island because there was like a small city on the island, and there were some opportunities to go there. But I was like, I'm taking advantage of this $800 a night resort and just doing this all week.
Love it.
And I was able to have some pretty incredible adventures just like on and around the resort. So going back to your like best day question, I befriended a bunch of different people, but Brittany's boss's husband.
Yeah.
Her boss is a Russian woman named Marina, and her husband is a Russian guy named Ed. So they've got this thick Russian accent, and like they're very sarcastic. Everything they say is very funny. So I got Ed and this other guy from Texas we kind of broke out of the resort, so to speak. We like hopped the fence. I think it was like in the middle of the trip on a Wednesday morning, and just started hiking around the mountains around the resort.
Love it.
Which was like super cool. It was like Ed was saying it kind of reminded him of Arizona. Like you would think like lush tropical Caribbean island, but it was like kind of arid.
It's dry,
dry, like long grasses, brown grasses everywhere, and rocks and boulders and thorns and stuff. So we're navigating up mountains through this like maze of thorns, and like all three of us immediately got extremely scratched up by thorns, which is not a bad thing. It was like very adventurous.
Yeah.
So we kept cresting these different ridges, and like eventually got to like the highest point we could safely climb.
Yeah.
And then we just have like the Caribbean all around us. We can see the resort way below. We can see the island of Nevis, the sister island, which is like a big volcano across the way. We can see like a bay in one direction.
That's awesome.
Definitely I don't do a lot of hill or mountain hiking, so for me that was like a pretty spectacular experience. And we all felt like such badasses getting torn up by the thorns, and we're just sitting at the top of this ridge for like 15 minutes once we got up there, each man sitting in silence, just meditating on the majesty. Like new friends, like locked in this adventure together. So that was pretty cool.
I love that.
Made it down, and then of course our wives give us a hard time about being all scratched up. But that was like the first half of the best day.
Ooh.
So like, am I drawing this out too much? Because I really like
this best day.
It was so good. I had such a good time.
You're really good at ranking things. So I want to hear more.
You know this about me.
I want to see the second half of this.
I have this obsession with determining like an order for how good.
What is the
things
best
are.
thing?
Yeah, like the best movie or the best meal I had in this week or like XYZ.
If someone listening to this ever comes across Alex, in their daily travels, and they ask him to rank things, so you can ask him to rank anything. You can say, "What's better, Coke or Pepsi?"
I would say Coke.
All right.
I enjoy it more.
What is better?
Coke Zero specifically.
What is better, celery or carrot?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say carrot.
All right.
I would say carrots are better than celery.
So again, we could do this forever. Obviously, people. I would say, what is better, the color green or the color red?
Green is less threatening, and it's more natural. It's more nature-y.
See, and there's always a reason for this too, for the ranking.
Yeah, and as far
there's
as
logic behind it.
As far as carrots and celery, I just like carrots because they're a little sweet and they're a good snack. Whereas celery, I get care less for it.
Yeah, celery works with toppings.
Right, yeah, in a salad.
And wings.
In Asian food, it's very good.
Yeah, fair. So the rest of the best day.
I would really like to tell you the rest of the day if you're up for it.
I'm totally.
This was fun. I know you'll be into
I love
this
best days. Everybody has best days when they travel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Best day.
The best day ever.
So we got back from the hike. Of course, we're all tired, but I was so high from like that hike. It was so good.
Yeah.
And I had been wanting to snorkel off the beach because the resort had its own beach.
Yeah.
And I had found out that there was actually good snorkeling right off the beach.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Florida, like in the Keys, for example, you can't really. There's not a lot of good snorkeling off of beaches and stuff because a lot of reefs in the world right off beaches or off islands have been kind of destroyed by tourism. But this just happened to be one of those places where there was good snorkeling. Like you could just swim right off the beach. It was like that in Hawaii too when I visited. And I'm sure there's a lot other tropical places like that. But got my snorkel gear going. Went with this other guy, another work friend of Brittany's. We had a good time. We went out. We saw some tropical fish. Saw a couple of lionfish, which are like very poisonous fish. So I kind of kept my distance. They've got the really long quills.
Yeah.
On the way back from like there was an outcropping of rocks and like a little reef off of one end of the beach, the left end.
Yeah.
On the way back, we were crossing like this vast expanse of seagrass.
Sure.
That was actually what was right off the beach. And I was kind of just looking for any last remaining sights and treasures. I just love snorkeling so much. It's like my favorite thing. And I saw just like out in the middle of nowhere, just on this bed of seagrass, this massive sea conch. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
CONCH.
Yes.
They're enormous. Talking like soccer ball size, enormous sea snails. Wow. And the
gnarly looking.
Yeah, I mean the shell. They have like the big spiral and then a huge flare, and it's usually like a pink kind of fading ombre, like pearlescent kind of thing on the inside. So I had actually seen a bunch of these shells, and there were even other like tourists that I saw like out of the shallow water grabbing empty conch shells. They were fairly plentiful down there, and I had never really seen these before. But I could tell there was something different about this one, so I dove down because we were in like probably 10 feet of water. Yeah. Grabbed the thing and I was like, "Yeah, this is heavy. There's a conch inside here," and I'd never seen one before. Yeah. So I picked it up. I was holding it out of the water with two hands. This guy Mike had his GoPro, so he's taking pictures. We're looking at the conch inside because you can see he's got like a little foot with looked like a shell on it. That was like his trap door. Or like his shield, and we can see like an eye and like the gray snail flesh.
That's cool.
And I'm telling you, man, these things. Have you ever seen one?
No,
they're huge.
Maybe in an aquarium, but I don't think so. I don't think I've seen them in person.
And I had actually the first day the company had taken us on this catamaran ride. Yeah. It was a sail, and I was talking with one of the locals who was like his job was taking us on. He was a sail guy, a tour guide, I guess. I don't know what to call him. But he was like casting a line off the back of the boat that first day, so I started asking him about pipe down here. That's my doggy. And he told me that he scuba dives for conchs and lobsters, and they just eat them all the time.
I love it.
And with the conch, they drill a hole in it or like crack a hole in it or something and pull the snail out.
I love it.
So I was like, fascinated with that because I've never eaten.
Yeah.
I've never even eaten conch, but I've never eaten any kind of snail before. And I'm somewhat of an adventurous eater.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to eventually eat snail of some kind.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so I grabbed this thing. I'm carrying it back to shore because I just immediately want to show everybody this live conch. Like all of Brittany's coworkers that have won this award and like their +1s and stuff. Like,
hey!
So I show Marina's boss, like she's with her husband. Or, I'm sorry, Brittany's boss, Marina, and her husband, Ed, in the water. Yeah. And Marina's giving, like, she's like, oh, that's so cool. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to try and eat this. And she immediately started giving me a hard time. Like, you can't eat your snail, buddy. That's not right. I'm not going to be able to talk with you anymore. She was joking with me. But I'm like, I know, I think I want to see if someone on staff could, like, cook this up for me. So, like, I brought this huge conch. I'm, like, dripping water. I'm, like, walking across, like, of course, the pool area, but then into, like, this lobby area where there's a concierge. And I'm, like, holding my conch. Like, hey, do you think anybody could... I don't know, like, cook this thing up for me.
And this $800 night, like, high-end place.
Yeah, I was just like rolling with it. I'm like, today's an adventure day, and so she's like, she clearly had never gotten a request like that before.
That's a wild request.
But she's like, let me just call somebody. So she calls like a chef that's on that property, and the chef comes out after like 20 minutes, and she looks at it, and she's like, we don't know how to cook that. Like, she's like, you would have to take it over to there was also a seafood restaurant on the property.
Yeah, cool.
So at any rate, it took some like investigation because they weren't open till 6 and it was like 4 o'clock, and I just kind of pleased and thank you'd my way to like them making an extra phone call or two.
That's the way to do it.
Like I was
not giving up and being very pleasant.
Yep, trying not to be a pain in the ass, like resort guest while also pursuing my intense lust for adventure. It turned on the charm. So they eventually they did call over to that place. The seafood restaurant, which they were in preparation for dinner, of course. Yeah. And they said, okay, bring it over, talk to Chef Terrence. So I'm hauling ass across the resort with my big conch under one arm, and people are like admiring it on the way. And I'm like, yeah, it's alive. I'm going to eat it. And like I get to the restaurant, and the hostess lets me in. And like I talk with this Chef Terrence, who's obviously busy, like doing real work, like preparing food for people. And, like, they took it. They're like, come back in 20 minutes. I came back in 20 minutes. They sat me at a table. No one else was in there. Oh. And, like, the hostess gives me some water. And they immediately brought out this dish. And I didn't even know what they were going to bring out because I didn't. Like,
you didn't know how they were going to cook it.
I didn't say, like, make me, like, grilled fritters or whatever. I'm just like, I want to eat this. So she brought it out, and it was a plate. It looked kind of like guacamole. Yeah. Like, there was avocado, and, like, tortilla chips around it with, I don't know, like, I think there was, like, cucumber and onions and different things with the conch meat all sliced up. Ceviche. So it was conch ceviche. So first time trying conch meat, it was a conch that I snorkeled out of the ocean that they like specially prepared for me, and I was just chowing down on this thing, and it was like totally okay, not the best thing I've ever eaten, but man, it tasted so good. You know what I mean?
That is an adventure. That is an adventure.
So I was like, thank you so much. You made my day. And they actually were just going to... I was like, so what do I owe you? And they were like, oh, nothing. It's free. I was like, no, come on. Wow. She's like, no, it's free. That's what happens when people bring in fish and stuff that they catch. It's like a free meal. So I'm like, So I gave her like a $20 tip. Yeah. And she was like, no, I can't take this. I was like, well, at least give it to the chef. I mean, you guys you just made my day.
Oh, yeah.
So then I'm walking out, and the chef, like, comes out through the gate, and she's, like, giving him the tip and saying, Alex wanted to give this to you. And he's like, did you like? I said, I loved it. It was amazing. You made my day. And I just, like, gave him a big old hug, and he's all sweaty and covered in food and stuff. And he was, like, for some reason so happy about it. And he said, it is good. It is good for the man. Our people believe it is good for, I don't know what he said, like virility or something like that. It's good for making babies. Oh! I was like...
what he didn't know is he already made a baby.
Yeah. Maybe I'll keep that in mind next time. But dude, that was awesome though. I mean, come on.
I love that adventure. See, so many people don't have days like that, but every travel experience can have a day. We're going to pause this a second.
All right.